Hey, we're out at the range with the Ruger Redhawk in 45 long Colt, 45 ACP. We're going to run a bunch of different cartridges through it today, and we're going to see how it does, and then we're going to finish up with a review. And there are other free men out here, so there is some gunfire in the background. We're going to start out with just Blazer 230 grain 45 ACP, which gets fed in on clips, and we'll get a close of these here a little later. We're going to move up to 45 long Colt, and I've got some Hornady critical defense, and we'll see how that shoots. And we've got some Freedom munitions long Colt. We're going to stay with 45 long Colt and go with the Corbon hollow points. Those had some kick. Now we're stepping up to the buffalo bore. These things are going to kick like a mule. That was not pleasant. We'll do a basic accuracy test with the some of that Freedom munitions long Colt. The target bounces around, as you'll see, so and I'm going to do this just freestanding, so you're only going to get kind of an idea of it. I'm not bench resting this, but it'll give you a pretty good idea. It's a pretty accurate gun. All right, we're going to try that again. All right, that's a little better. All right, we're going to put 3 rounds of the buffalo bore in, and we're going to fire them in rapid succession, or at least as fast as I can, to see if I can hit anything, to kind of simulate, well, if I had to hit something, could I? That really wasn't very good. All right, we're going to try that again. All right, that was a lot better. Still not very good. Need more practice, but a lot better. All right, I've got to do 3 more rounds of the buffalo bore. I think I can do better, and we're going to find out. It was a little better, but that heavy loaded ammo takes a lot of practice to get good with, so... Just for kicks, I'm going to do that same test we did with the buffalo bore, only I'm going to use the 45 ACP, which in a gun this heavy shoots very, very lightly. So I'll see how I do with a lot lighter loads, and hopefully it'll improve my, my rapid fire. Not sure what happened to the first couple shots, but I think I got it a little closer by the end. I'm going to do that again with the 45 ACP. I think I can do better. That is more like it. And it serves as a good example of why we need to get out to the range and practice. The loads we used on the range was just some 45 ACP, 230 grain full metal jacket, some 200 grain 45 cowboy action load. Both these shot pretty light, very light shooting loads. Got a little heavier with this 255 grain flat point ammunition from Freedom Munitions, as well as this Hornady Critical Defense 185 grain FTX. Got a lot warmer once I started shooting this Corbon 200 grain jacketed hollow point plus P. Now it states that it's 1100 feet per second. I may have had a little bit less than that because I was only using the 4.2 inch barrel on this machine. And then as we get to the buffalo bore, these medium cast hollow point 260 grain bullets, it says 1500 feet per second. Again, I was probably a little lower than that, but believe me, these hit your hand like a ton of bricks. Ton of recoil there, and it'll show up on the video. But the nice thing about shooting something like this is I would feel comfortable with maybe a complete hard cast bullet from buffalo bore in bear country. With a firearm that would be manageable to carry as opposed to something a lot heavier. So, you know, with these kinds of loading, something as light as this and as heavy as this firearm has a ton of flexibility. We're going to take a look at the Ruger Redhawk in 45 long Colt and 45 ACP. Before we go too far, let's just double check that the gun is safe and unloaded. I think we can see in there. Chambers are empty. Okay. The real nice thing about this firearm is its flexibility. You can fire 45 ACP when mounted in these moon clips, or you can fire 45 long Colt. Now, of course, the reason that the 45 ACP would need to be mounted in these moon clips is because of the way the cartridge is designed and the rim. They'd fall through the chamber without the moon clip. Now, there is a recess right here in the moon clip, excuse me, right here in the chamber that accepts the moon clip, so the rounds don't slip through. The nice thing is when firing 45 ACP, these just slip in like a speed loader. Very simple, and come out and the shells are all in one place. Here's a bit of a close-up as to what the moon clip looks like. These are fairly thin material. I haven't had a problem with them yet. They're easy to load and unload. It's as easy or easier than loading up a magazine in a semi-automatic. I could see these getting bent eventually, so I like to have a few spares, and they're not that expensive. You can get them from a lot of places online. One thing worth showing is how easy it is to really load and unload these clips. For example, if you just want to load the clip up, and so forth. And it's actually easier to take off a spent cartridge. You can get a better grip on it, but the rounds come off very easily. That last one is about as hard as it gets, and it was really just my grip was slipping on it. So I've seen some reviews out there that talked about these being kind of hard to load and unload. I have 6 of these, and I didn't find difficulty with loading or unloading any of them without gloves, without tools. So that's kind of a nice feature too. It's about as easy as loading any speed loader for a revolver. Talk a little bit about the firearm itself. The material it's made out of is stainless steel. It's about a 4.2-inch barrel. The trigger is fairly heavy at about 14, maybe 13 to 15 pounds in double action, and slightly under 10 in single action. It's actually a fairly smooth trigger, and I dry fired it maybe 15-20 times, and it loosened up quite a bit to be very, very smooth. So even though it's a fairly heavy trigger pull, I didn't find that heavy trigger pull very difficult to control. The machine came with these laser etched wooden grips, and these are absolutely beautiful. Unfortunately, though, I found it very difficult to grip the firearm with these on, so I put these Hogue grips on instead, and I find the firearm a lot easier to control, especially when shooting heavy loads, and we'll see that at the range. One thing about these Hogue grips, I ordered these for a standard Ruger Redhawk, but a lot of the Redhawks have a bell shape bottom to the grip, and you can see on this and the way it's shown here on these original grips, there's a curved shape on this particular grip. So I had to use a grinder to kind of ground off this bell shape, because when the grips came in, they actually stuck out to about here, and it was very uncomfortable on this particular firearm. Hogue may have other grips that specifically fit this firearm. I didn't find them. These seem fine with 5 minutes on a wheel grinder to custom fit them to this grip, and then of course the Hogue grips install very easily. Sights are very nice. They're real easy to pick up. The rear sight is adjustable. The front sight is a post with a red insert that's very easy on the eyes to pick up in a lot of different backgrounds. I was in a fairly dark shooting range today, and I didn't have any problem picking this up and getting a good sight picture. The gun itself weighs about 45 ounces, so when it's fully loaded, it's approaching 3 pounds, and I wouldn't use this as a carry piece, but it's got enough weight that when you're shooting these 45s, boy, it is just so pleasant to shoot these 45 ACPs. And when we shoot some really hotly loaded long Colts, there's enough weight to provide some counter effort to the recoil of these heavier loads. I consider myself more a fan of semi-automatics than revolvers, but revolvers do have their place. For example, if I do want to load something very, very light or load something very, very heavy, I can go far different power factors without having to worry about it. For example, in a 10 millimeter, if I want to shoot lighter loads or heavy loads, I really have to think about the spring I have in it. And I have a 10 millimeter that if I load heavily, I do have to change the springs out to run it reliably at heavy loads versus light loads. Whereas something like this, you just put the ammunition in and it goes bang. And that sort of flexibility is really nice to have. This is, you know, it's loaded in 45 long Colt, but with the ammunition you have available, this is almost like a 45 Magnum. I also checked with Ruger and I checked with Buffalo Bore to make sure that that heavy commercially available ammunition that I'm loading in here was safe to shoot, and they confirmed yes, it was. Just a gorgeous gun. The machine is about 10 inches long, a little over 6 inches high, and with this Hogue grip, it definitely doesn't favor someone with small hands. Now, my hands are a bit larger. I can palm a basketball, and so this is comfortable. You really do need some length on your hand to get around this trigger because it is a heavy trigger pull. But I didn't find it a problem, and I would say if you can comfortably shoot a Glock 21 Gen 3, this is probably in grip size somewhere between a Glock 21 Gen 3 and Gen 4 in terms of size, so it's pretty manageable. One of the things is a bit of a downside. I do think that to comfortably shoot and accurately shoot the heavier loads, you need some sort of grip like this. And one of the things about it I noticed when I was ejecting rounds, this can catch, like, see if I can get it to show. See it? It can catch on the ejection, which makes a speed reload a little challenging, not impossible, but one minor drawback of the firearm, which in the grand scheme of things isn't a big deal. Still enjoy shooting it quite a bit. Still make sure we are unloaded. And let's continue. Another slight drawback of this firearm is even with these Hogue grips, your hand is still against metal, and that metal is going against your hand when the firearm recoils. Now, it's smooth, this grip is nice, it's manageable even with the heavy Buffalo Bore loads. However, if you look at the, this is a Hogue overmolded grip that would go on like a Ruger Alaskan, and there's a padded insert in here that would really absorb the recoil nicely. Now, if this design was used on this firearm, this grip would become enormous, and it would probably be unwieldy for almost everyone. So, I don't think it's a realistic feature to put on this firearm, but it is something that will make this firearm kick a little harder than perhaps some other Ruger designs or some other designs that would take a Hogue grip that would look more like this. So kind of as a summary, I really love this firearm. It's got so much flexibility, and that's where I think the Revolver shines over semi-automatics, even though I'm a semi-automatic guy. You know, I can load this with something very light and 45 ACP, and it just shoots so pleasantly, and I can just load it all the way up to the high end of 44 Magnum. And that kind of flexibility is just hard to achieve with a semi-automatic. So kind of one example, you know, it's very super reliable. You know, easy to carry. It's relatively compact. I still think there's a place for revolvers, and this particular firearm is a great example of that. That's one of the reasons I chose this, is because I can shoot very inexpensive 45 ACPs. You know, certainly with a 44 Magnum, you can shoot 44 specials. 44 specials are expensive. 45 ACPs are very abundant, very inexpensive, and from a complexity standpoint, I already have 45, so I have some commonality of ammunition as opposed to a completely new firearm platform. And as you start getting more firearms, you start to realize that it starts to become difficult to stock ammo for everything if you have a lot of different calibers. So standardizing where you can is very helpful. In this case, does give me the Magnum-like power, but still the flexibility, a commonality with other calibers that I have, which are readily available and inexpensive.